Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable Senators, let me see what's the petition. Draw the attention of the Senate to the following. Background that the petitioners are citizens of Kenya from the Rendile and Samburu community living in Marsabit County, specifically in Karare Ward. Okay, Honorable Senators, I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted by the Rendile and Samburu community representatives concerning acquisition of Karare land by Kenya Defense Forces. 2, as you are aware, pursuant to Article 119.1 of the Constitution, and I quote, every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation. Honorable Senators, the salient issues raised in the petition are A, that in the year 2019, the Kenya Defense Forces, KDF, expressed interest in acquiring land in Saku sub-county of Marsabit County, totaling to 2,500 acres. B, that following meetings between community leaders, the county commissioner, and KDF representatives, the community objected to the acquisition of Karare land and suggested alternative land at Kubikalo for acquisition by KDF. See that while the community is aware of the legal basis for compulsory acquisition of land by the government, they take issue on the acquisition of Karare land by the KDF on the basis that it poses an existential threat to the livelihoods of the predominantly pastoral Samburu and Rendile communities, as the land is a dry season water catchment area for Marsabit County that including communities living in Karare, Songa, Loglogo, Kaboyole, Laisamis, Kaigi, and Kor. that the community has on several occasions been coerced into accepting the acquisition of Karare land by the KDF, but they have not obliged, citing the centrality of the land for sustainability of the environment and livelihoods, with over 150 camels, 215,000 sheep and goats, and 85,000 cattle dependent on Karare ecosystem during droughts. Further, that a total of 98,000 people who depend on the livestock would lose their livelihoods if Karare land is compulsorily acquired. That considering that in the past the community has lost over 150 acres to the Lake Turkana wind power project, their dry season grazing pasture has been significantly diminished, and therefore the acquisition of Karare land would exacerbate their plight. That owing to their minority status and weak representation in government, the Rendile and Samburu community of Marsabit fear that they could lose the land despite their objections, and having failed helpless petitioned the county commissioner, the county governor, the cabinet secretary for interior and coordination of national government, and the National Land Commission for redress, all of whom have never responded. The petitioners therefore pray that the Senate intervenes and undertake an investigation with a view to halting the process of compulsory acquisition Karare land for the benefit of the Rendile and Samburu communities residing in the area, and make appropriate recommendations on the matter. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 231, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarification in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Argura. You can request by pressing your buttons we are on. Senator Argura. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment on this petition. Mr. Speaker, I'm aware of this situation. I come from the same community, and this is an issue which is very live in the community. And I also thank the community members for having trust and faith in the Senate, because these are issues which need to be addressed. And I hope when it comes to the right committee, which is the Lands Committee, which I'm a member, then we'll take it up on behalf of the Senate. Mr. Speaker, it's true, we have been losing our land, like the 150,000 acres which was given to Lake Turkana Wind Power, where we still have courts in case for the last now 6 years. And we have found it to be a very tall order. Once community land is acquired, to get it back is difficult. So as the Senate, as the Lands Committee, will endeavor, look at all the prevailing situation, the land status, any other outstanding issues, so that we deal with it fairly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Msurve.
Thank you, Can I be heard? Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that indeed this petition that has come from the Rendile and Samburu community is a very valid petition. And since it has come to the attention of the Senate, we are here with a cause, we are here with a purpose to represent the counties and the interests of the counties. And Honorable Speaker, as it is very clear from the petition that is before this Senate, this community has tried to reach to the Land Commission, but the Land Commission has not responded. It is just in the interest of the common good of the residents of Rendile and Samburu that they listen to Honorable Speaker, so that they do not lose their livestock, they do not lose what they have really, cherished for a very long time. And they have also been in the community for so many years. And it is unthinkable that one day they'll just wake up and find that they do not have their land at all. So there's need for the committee to really look into this issue, very critically, so that there is service done to the residents of Samburu. I support this petition, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Professor Ongeri. Like I said, you can request using your buttons. Proceed, Senator Ongeri. Give him the mic. Okay, you are on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Issue of land is an emotive issue since independence. The two contesting group is the Kenya Defense Forces and the Samburu and the Rendile people. For people to be able to make that kind of petition to this House, it's as a result that they have sought all various avenues in being able to address this issue through the National Land Commission and other authorities relevant within that area. And if you may notice, Mr. Speaker, this is an area which is prone to a lot of insecurity. And to add injury to this insecurity, if there is again a conflict on the matters of land, I think this House, in its wisdom, should be able to listen to this petition, inquire into this petition, and see how to reconcile the two sides, both the KDF, which is the government, and also the habitants of Samburu and that region. And if left unattended to, we may see more and more insecurity. So we are more interested in the peacemaking arrangements between the warring parties there, and at the same time, peacemaking efforts between the residents of that region and the government, because each has a claim to some land for purposes which are very specific. And I think we also need to have a security operational corridor there in order to be able to safeguard the livelihoods of the residents who are staying in that region. With those few remarks, I think this is a petition well put before this House, and I think we should address ourselves the issues of trying to bring harmony and understanding on the usage of land use in its various capacities. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Fatuma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to congratulate the petitioners for this petition. As my colleagues have said, the matters of land is actually very sensitive and it's very emotive. Mr. Speaker, I believe there is a similar petition before the Committee of Lands on KDF and Isiolo County. But apparently, in fact, we even went to Isiolo with the committee to listen to the complaints raised by the communities living in those affected areas. For example, Isiolo is sandwiched actually between several camps owned by KDF. And majority of the people living in Isiolo are pastoralists. Unfortunately, it looks like when this land was being acquired for KDF, the community participation was not done, both in Isiolo and Marsabit and other parts of this country. And the Constitution is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that the communities must be involved, the communities must be compensated when this land is acquired. But the current scenario is KDF is just coming on the ground telling people, move out. This is our land. We've been allocated many years back. This is really unfair. It's quite unfair. In a case in Isiolo, people who have lived for almost 30 years, they are being told, move out of here. Where are they going to go? So I hope the committee will be able to dispense this matter as quickly as possible. Even the one before the committee, the minister is playing hide and seek game to come and give information to the committee. So I hope the Committee of Lands, if they are here, they should actually summon the minister to come and explain what is happening, because hide and seek game does not help Kenyans. And these are people whose rights need to be protected. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of Minority, then Senator Shionga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also join to support this petition. Mr. Speaker, the land question in Kenya has been a very difficult and controversial question, and the enactment of the Constitution was supposed to resolve some of these burning questions in relation to land. Particularly, Mr. Speaker, of concern were areas in the northern part of Kenya where land tenure cannot be on the basis of the kind of single title tenure or individual title tenure that we have in the rest of the country. In the northern parts of Kenya, there are a lot of considerations that must be put in place because water is a very essential commodity in some of these areas. And corridors must be established for people who graze land to move miles and miles in search of water, so that if there's an acquisition that interferes with the movement of people and the animals between grazing land and water catchment areas, it creates a lot of difficulties. And in Samburu, particularly in Laikipia, in Marsabit, and in Wajir and Mandera, the whole of that region, it is very important before government acquires any land for any purpose to get the green light from the communities. Because if that is not done, it creates a lot of suffering. And therefore, I support this petition and hope that in the future, if KDF, and KDF is one of the government bodies or agencies that keep on acquiring land in some of these arid and semi-arid areas. The Agricultural Development Corporation also has got some land in these regions. Before they do that, the first priority should be for the communities and their interests, because there is no reason why the KDF should own miles and miles of square miles of land when the local community are suffering. It is by itself a basis of creating conflict and injustice, which can lead to insecurity. So I support this petition and hope that the concerned committee will come back with solutions and put the KDF and the ministry involved, the department, and the National Land Commission. Particularly the National Land Commission is not responding to the historical and constitutional responsibilities that were placed on it in addressing land injustices, not just historical, but even current land injustices. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Shionga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this petition. Mr. Speaker, I would like to start by congratulating the petitioners for bringing this petition to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, the land-related issues are increasing. They are increasing in day-to-day lives. And we are seeing with the population growing, especially in our country, there is some issues of land causing very violent disputes amongst our communities. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we have Land Commission or National Land Commission, and also the Ministry of Land which is subject to this matter, needs to resolve this matter without leaving people, especially who have land disputes, lose their lives. Mr. Speaker, just of late, we had an issue of land dispute, even in Kakamega, where we lost people and lives are being lost. I want to say that the Samburu and the Rendile people have a right, just like any other, to occupy their land. And with the KDF being a respected institute in Kenya, whereby it owns vast of land. If you go around the Republic of Kenya, the KDF owns acres or hectares of lands across the country, but they are not utilized as much as when people need to utilize them. If there is such a case, then we need to resolve this issue, and the committee that is supposed to handle this issue needs to resolve this issue before lives are lost, because land issues are leading to our people being killed, and the KDF being an institute known being armed and being energetic enough to handle issues without even controversies. They need to respect the people who own this land or the ancestral land since the days in memory. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to support the petition, and I say I hope the Samburu and Rendile people will get the justice they deserve.
Senator Imana. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance also to say something about this particular petition. I support this petition forthwith. Mr. Speaker, the question of land, as my colleagues have said, is a really touchy issue. Somehow, the Ministry of Lands has not stepped in to try to solve some of these problems. There are boundaries that were put in place by the colonials, and these are what cut out what we call our counties today. Yet, the ministry is not showing this clearly so that we can avoid some of these squabbles. The squabbles is because the boundaries are not defined. This problem that is all over the place is not only between the Samburu and Rendile, it's everywhere in the country. It's everywhere in the country, even international countries, international boundaries are being threatened. I want to thank Honorable Dulo for standing up for her people in Isiolo. We had this problem before, where KDF is claiming light tracts of land in Isiolo and pushing out Wananchi. Wananchi own the land. The land does not belong to KDF, it belongs to Wananchi. So they should be given preference when it comes to who occupies the land. We have this same problem between the Turkana and their neighbors in what you call now Kapedo. This has been a sticking issue for a long time because the boundaries are not defined as to which part goes in Turkana and which part goes in Baringo. The same thing is with our neighbors in West Pokot. We have boundary issues and the ministry is not doing anything about it. The same thing is happening between us and Uganda. Uganda is moving into Kenya, claiming parts that we know belong to Kenya. But again, the ministry is not doing anything to say this is Kenya and this is Uganda. The same thing is going on in South Sudan. When are we going to get a rest? The government is supposed to step in and solve some of these problems. Otherwise, we're going to keep on losing lives because the people who are fighting do not even know where the boundaries are. They are fighting based on their traditional knowledge. They are fighting because they say, this part has always been Samburu. And the Rendile say, no, this has always been Rendile. So it needs an independent body like the government to come in and say, okay, Samburu ends here and Rendile begins here. Otherwise, this is going to continue forever. When is the ministry going to stand up and solve the problems of the people of this country? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this petition, and I hope I hope that the section of the Senate that is going to be given this are going to take it seriously and find a solution to these squabbles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Maruma, then Senator Chilo Ayako. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity you've given me to weigh in into this petition that has got to do with government institutions taking away land from communities without due consideration of the law. We have a similar situation in Isiolo, and I am in the Lands Committee. We visited Isiolo, and when we were asking questions from KDF how they acquired land belonging to residents of Ngaremara, they told us that there is a gazette notice, or the government gazetted land and gave it to KDF. And I've been asking myself, is that the only way government can acquire land, or government institution can acquire land from people, using a simple gazette notice? What about the residents who are living there? What is their plight? Where do you expect them to go? I think there is a law guiding compulsory acquisition of land by government institutions. That law is there, it must be followed. And the plight of the people also must be addressed. Like in Isiolo, over 50,000 people are facing eviction. Why? Because KDF has acquired land from people. The same as the Rendile and the petitioners who have just petitioned. Elsewhere across the country, even in my county, we have prison service gazetting 900 acres of land, giving it to prison department without due consideration of the people who are living around there. I think the Committee of Lands, where I sit, must work very hard to assist the people or the petitioners get their right to land. If they're not going to remain there, then they should be given alternative land. My only problem is that the CS lands and the CS defense are playing hide and seek. They are not answering to our questions. And also the NLC, which is mandated to protect community interests. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this petition, and I know from our committee we would work very hard, would apply ourselves judiciously to make sure that the people who have petitioned get their rights. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ochilo, then Farhia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to state that I support this petition because land is the foundation of all rights. In fact, human existence is founded on land. You cannot exist in space. You must exist on some land. So, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that both government and KDF are the ones becoming a threat to Rendile people, to people in these counties. These people have no other way of existing. They have no other way of operating without their operations based on land and based on production that must be done on land. So, Mr. Speaker, the committee to which this matter will be referred to has a Herculean task of protecting the people who occupy these parcels of land. There is a distorted view that is not conventional, that land, you can only own land if you have title deed. Now, ownership of land is using that land. If people have to traverse the land to look for water, if people have to traverse the land to go to forests for their activities, it does not matter how many kilometers those forests and those water sources are from where those people are settled. They must go to those places in order to survive, and the animals to survive, they must go to those forests in order to survive. So the notion that You see large parcels of land in Samburu, in Turkana, in Isiolo, in Mandera, in Wajir, and you think that they are not occupied, is distorted, because these people have to travel several kilometers to access other ways of sustaining their livelihood, and this must be protected by government. In fact, the first question that government must address at all times is how do these people survive before you even think of KDF. KDF has no use, it's of no use if it is a threat to the livelihood of people. It might as well operate in the sea or in the lake where people don't live, because it has nobody to defend if the very people it's supposed to defend have to be extinct. Because there is no government without people. We all know of the Convention of 1933 that describes nation states as a land, as a people, as territory, and as government. Without people, there is no need for KDF. So I want to urge the committee responsible for this to ensure that we start by looking at the existence and survival of people. Then how to protect those people. If we are a threat to the existence of those people, then there is nothing to protect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Farhia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, you know, in pastoral communities, land is co-owned by so many people, and it is for grazing. And sometimes when people see an empty land, it is construed that it has no one. But pastoralists, what they do is, there is a section of the land that is there for during the wet season, and there is a section of the land that they migrate to during the dry season. And these people also have another problem of conflict, whether from the neighbors or inter-clan community because of, a scarcity of resources like land and water. So if there is a land that, the way I heard, that the community wanted to give to KDF, an alternative land from the one they are taking, I think that is fair, because that means these people are willing for them to settle somewhere, but you're settling where they wanted to graze. So I think this matter needs to be looked at carefully. Otherwise, if that land for grazing is taken, there's a lot of people who will fall back to poverty, who are now self-sustaining. Mr. Speaker, even around the border areas, in terms of, like, for example, Marsabit, Moyale, or Wajir, for example, not Ethiopia, and then Marsabit, Ethiopia, or like Wajir County, Ethiopia, and Somalia, there are points around the border where there are a lot of insecurity due to either terror threat or other threats. The community are more than willing for the KDF to settle there so that they get a buffer from the enemies. So those are some of the lands they should target, not where people are grazing and not where, livelihood is being threatened. And due to also climatical changes, Mr. Speaker, the grazing land is shrinking every year due to more desertification. And Mr. Speaker, if this is not addressed, Mr. Speaker, there will be a lot of people who will just become destitute, and they will be wiped out by just the next drought. So, Mr. Speaker, these are issues that we cannot afford to take it lightly, Mr. Speaker, because as government, we need to protect our own people, their lives and their livelihoods. And this is one of the examples we need to do that. So, Mr. Speaker, I think these petitioners are hoping that Senate is the last resort where they think they will get justice. Mr. Speaker, let these people get the justice they deserve, and the committee should prioritize land issues. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 232-1, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment, and Natural Resources, and in terms of Standing Order 232, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioners by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Senator Dulo.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Thursday, 23rd June 2020. The National Government Budget Implementation Review Report for the first 9 months for financial year 2019-2020. I thank you.
Honorable Senators, before we proceed to the next order, which is notices of motion, I have a communication to make. On Tuesday, 16th June 2020, the Vice Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights laid on the table of the Senate the report of the Committee on the nomination of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo for appointment as a non-member of Parliament, a Parliament Commissioner to Parliamentary Service Commission. The tabling of the report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights was done in fulfillment of Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act and Standing Order 71(1) and 3 of the Senate, following the submission to the Senate by the Parliamentary Service Commission of its report on the appointment of a commissioner under Article 1272D of the Constitution and Section 9 of the Parliamentary Service Act on Tuesday, 2nd June 2020. Honorable Senators, after the tabling of the report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the nomination of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo for appointment as a non-member of the Parliamentary Commissioner to the Parliamentary Service Commission, the Vice Chairperson at the order notices of motion on Tuesday, 16 June 2020 gave notice on adoption of the report in the following terms, and I quote, that the Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the approval of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo for appointment as a non-member of Parliament, Commissioner to the Parliamentary Service Commission laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 16th June 2020 pursuant to Standing Order 71, and that pursuant to Article 127D of the Constitution and Section 9(2) of the Parliamentary Service Act approves the appointment of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo as a member of the Parliamentary Service Commission. Honorable Senators, by a letter dated 22nd June 2020, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. MP, who is also a member of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights, brought to my attention an error in the notice of motion issued as aforementioned, whereby the notice of motion given and the recommendation in the report of the Standing Committee was not congruent. The Senator explained that the error in the notice of motion arose from reliance on documents which had been prepared beforehand by the Standing Committee in readiness for laying on the table, but which the Standing Committee had not made its final determination on. The Senator concluded by seeking the Speaker's approval for the motion to be moved in an amended form. Upon verification of the claims by the Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. MP, the committee at page 21 of its report recommends that the Senate does not approve the appointment of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo to the position of member of Parliamentary Service Commission under Article 172(2)D of the Constitution. As such, therefore, it is clear that the notice of motion given on Tuesday, 16th June 2020 by the Standing Committee for consideration and determination by the Senate and the Standing Committee recommendation contained in the report are at cross purposes. This is a situation that needs to be remedied before we proceed with the motion on the Standing Committee report. Having considered the matters raised by Senator Mutula Jr. and the totality of the circumstances, I have granted approval pursuant to Standing Order Number 1 as read together with Standing Order 55 for a new notice of motion to be given in the terms set out in the supplementary order paper to correct the anomaly, and that upon the new notice of motion being given, the earlier notice of motion stands withdrawn within the meaning of the Standing Order 56. I now direct the clerk to call out the next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to give notice of the following motion. Adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights on the nomination of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo for appointment as a non-member of Parliament Commission to the Parliamentary Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to give the notice that reads that taking into consideration the recommendation of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights in its report on the proposed appointment of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo as a member of the Parliamentary Service Commission laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 16 June 2020, pursuant to Standing Order 71 and cognizant of the provision of Article 127 2D of the Constitution, Section 9 of the Parliamentary Service Act and Section 3 and 8 of the Public Appointment Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, the Senate rejects the proposed appointment of Honorable Rachel Ameso Amolo as a non-member of Parliament Commissioner to the Parliamentary Service Commission. I thank you.
Next order.
Order number 7, statements.
Senator Trans Nzoia County is away. Oh, Senator Were. Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to make this statement on behalf of Senator Mike Ombito, the Senator for Trans Nzoia County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 47-1 to make a statement on an issue of general topical concern, namely biodiversity protection as key in the realization of food security. Mr. Speaker, sir, the ecosystems of our planet produce a wealth of nourishing food ranging from grains, which are harvested from its plains and steppes, valleys and terraces. All these have been made possible due to diversity as the root of this plenty. This variety of crops and food on which human civilizations have grown and depend is possible because of the tremendous variety of life on Earth. Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to achieve human development, then food security is among the ingredients that are vital in driving the growth of our workforce. Therefore, there's need to start rethinking the way we use the biodiversity in order for it to feed us, but first and foremost, we must protect this diversity from challenges facing it. Mr. Speaker, sir, the need to feed the increasing population has made intensive farming the most practical action to take by many governments. This has led to farming and encroachment into biodiversity important areas and sensitive habits such as forested areas, wetlands, and riparian areas. Competition between food crops and wild biodiversity and also loss of indigenous crop diversity has been brought about as people seek to grow high-value crops that give fast but short-term cash gains. Recent findings show that recent abrupt land changes like deforestation or intensification through agriculture, fragmentation and loss of habitat can cause even more impactful and long-lasting damage to biodiversity. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenya's economy is highly dependent on natural resources, meaning that recurrent droughts, erratic rainfall patterns, and floods will continue to negatively impact livelihoods and community assets. Climate change has adverse impacts on the country's economic development and threatens the realization of Vision 2030 goals, which is a pillar of creating a competitive and prosperous nation with a high quality of life. The rapid man-made climate change speeds up this process without affording ecosystems and species the time to adapt. Environment and natural resources, Mr. Speaker, in Kenya are valuable national assets that must be sustainably managed for present and future generations. They offer a range of benefits and opportunities for local and national economic development, improved livelihoods, and provision of environmental goods and services. It is time that we enact policies that will control poaching, overfishing, and overharvesting, which contribute greatly to the loss of biodiversity. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Musuruve.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And allow me, Honorable Speaker, to support this statement that Senator Mbito has brought on the floor of this House. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that the life of every forms matter. All animals matter. All plants matter. And each species in the universe has a role to play in its own unique way. And so there's need for every species to be given a chance to play the role that it can play in this world. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that there's need for enhanced sustainability of all forms of life. And also, since time immemorial, human beings, plants, and animals have always coexisted, and this is something that has been forgotten very, very fast. And there's need to rethink how even our grandparents lived, how our ancestors lived. They lived with animals, they lived with plants. I remember even when I was growing up, Honorable Speaker, when you had malaria, we did not go to hospital for treatment. I remember my grandfather, recommending some certain tree, I think Muarubaini, and this was medicinal. So there are some plants that are also medicinal, and I remember even when I was growing up, there's some roots that we used to take, like called mugombero. They have some medicinal value, but right now you'll find that people do not really know that such plants are helpful. So there's need for us to rethink on how we can sustain biodiversity for the purpose of ensuring that they're also helping in the pharmaceutical area. They're helpful. They're also helping in terms of food. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, sometimes you find that people are dying because they don't have food. But there's some natural, animals and plants that can be used even as food. And I remember even when I was growing up, there's some animals that, there's some insects that would just come, white ants. And they would be fried and would eat with the ugali. And it is a delicacy that has proteins, it has fats and all that. So there's need to ensure that we are not, we are protecting the biodiversity because of the roles that they play. And I want to say sometimes, Honorable Speaker, there are some species that are actually threatened, like fish. Sometimes you find that people do a lot of, they overfish so that the animals sometimes, become less or, become extinct. So there's need for us to see how can we enhance biodiversity? How can we ensure that we are benefiting from the natural foods that God has presented before human beings? And even as we do this, Honorable Speaker, there's also need to ensure that as we are coexisting with animals, then the human beings are also protected so that they're not harmed with the animals that are there. Like, for instance, snakes. Snakes have also their benefits in terms of medicinal, and they can also be harmful to human beings. So there's need to strike a balance to ensure that we are coexisting in a very harmonious way. So, Honorable Speaker, I support this statement that Senator Mbito has brought, before this House, and there's need even for the Senator to think of coming up with a bill that will support this statement that he has brought before. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity.
Senator Professor Ongeri.
Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to talk on a subject which is so close to my heart. Biodiversity in itself is the livelihood of individuals, species within the world, whether they are in the air or in the soil or under the sea. The ecosystems are balanced in such a wonderful way that humanity was bequeathed this rich biodiversity to be able to conserve it for sustainable use for the livelihood of each and every individual. I happen to have been the Kenya's ambassador to United Nations on environment, and one of the conventions that are successfully negotiated was the Biodiversity Convention. And one of the elements that stood out quite clearly at that time was the indication that the whole world was moving towards biodiversity because of its inherent wealth that was embedded in the biodiversity products that were coming out. If you remember, particularly if I single out the medicinal products, this is where the West or the so-called developed nations were able to patent some of the ingredients that had been derived from the biodiversity products for their own use, and therefore were sold back to the third world countries at a very exorbitant prices, out of reach for anybody to be able to reach and use them for their own sustainable livelihoods. And therefore, one of the areas that has been unfortunately exploited to the extent that it's been denuded, as it were, by the researchers of various countries, the developed nations, is the biodiversity elements in Africa and some of these huge forests like the Congo forest and the Amazon forest that have been very, very heavily polluted and sustainably, rather not sustainably, but unsustainably exploited. So biodiversity is in fact a balance between the rich and the poor, and particularly for the poor, because of the loss of the biodiversity, either as a result of natural disasters. And Mr. Speaker, you can easily already note that one of the elements recently has been flooding. If you see flooding all over the country of Kenya, whether you are talking flooding in Nyando region, you are talking of flooding in Trans Nzoia region, Budalangi area, and the northeastern, the coast, everywhere, this goes and involves loss of biodiversity. And we cannot afford this because this is a result of climate change. The patterns of climate change, again, I had the singular honor of negotiating the framework on climate change, Convention on Climate Change, and with a particularity to desertification, with a particularity to Africa. Again, this constellation of events have been able to denude the environment to an extent that even the ordinary mwananchi cannot be able to sustainably use these elements. Another area where this pollution has occurred is the pollution of water. And therefore, this statement is bringing back to our attention the air that we breathe. Is it full of good oxygen that it can be able to resuscitate us in moments of when we are in a very bad environment? That's very important. Tree planting and conservation of the forest is a key factor in ensuring that the ambient oxygen that we breathe is clean. The water that we drink, Mr. Speaker, if the climate is changed, then we'll have difficulties in getting clean drinking water for our livelihood. And water is life. Those of you who didn't know, 80% of your body mass is water. The rest of it is 20% is made up of these other bones and the tissues that we have in life. And therefore, this is a very important area. And then biodiversity for food production. How do we produce food for survival, particularly in poor nations and poor countries? These are very important areas that this statement is bringing to our attention that, hold on, How are you sustainably using the products that have been given to you by which are God sent to you? You have destroyed them. You have created disaster in all those areas. Again, biodiversity as a fuel. You know, most of our families don't have electricity, and therefore they use good fuel for use of these things. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I can speak volumes on this subject. But the fact is that are we looking after our climate, or are we going along the way of climate change? That's what the statement is trying to bring our attention to. Are we sustainably conserving the biodiversity for our food consumption? The answer is no. Are we sustainably conserving clean drinking water? The answer is no. Are we sustainably holding together the things that need to be held together for our own survival and livelihood? The answer is no. And therefore, it's time now, Mr. Speaker, that we now go into greater depth to understand how this biodiversity for our livelihood, for our sustainability, for our for clearance of, or rather for alleviation of poverty, and many others, for our own enrichment, for medicinal purposes. It's an array of topics that we can speak end on. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this statement, and whoever is being given, I'll be interested to know how that statement is going to be developed for our future use. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any more interest. The next statement is from Senator Hargura Godana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 47-1 to make a statement on a matter of county-wide, inter-county, national, international concern, namely the general state of security in Marsabit County, the neighboring counties and neighboring country, that is Ethiopia, which we border. Mr. Speaker, sir, there has been serious escalation of attacks and loss of lives, mainly between residents, as it started since 2018, between the residents of North Hor and Saku constituency around the area of Orodere. And to date, these fights and these attacks have claimed not less than 33 lives along that particular area. And also there have been attacks on the Kenya-Ethiopian border at Forole and Ledimtu area, which also claim not less than 12 people, with many other injuries. Recently, Mr. Speaker, within this month of June 2020, the conflict has occurred between the residents of Moyale sub-county and Wajir County. In this conflict, not less than 10 lives were lost, and about 400 camels were stolen. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the leadership from both counties, that is Marsabit and Wajir, for the speed with which they moved to contain the situation and reconcile the communities, which is still an ongoing process, and I hope it will not escalate. Mr. Speaker, on 8th of June, at around 6 p.m., 4 youths from the Rendile community who were on their way from Marsabit town coming back to Songa were killed in cold blood between Songa and Badasa. These are 2 university students, 1 KCSE candidate and the border operator, and they were killed at close range, and it was done in a manner to incite the community, because these unarmed youths who are just returning, I'm told even the university students were actually, they have gone to Marsabit to send their assignments to their lecturers, and it was done in a very heinous way, because each of them had not less than 10 bullet wounds to their head and chest. It was not a normal killing. And Mr. Speaker, that was last week. That is when I asked to make this statement. But between last week and now, 2 other incidents have occurred. Around Loyangalani area, some herdsmen were attacked from the Rendile community. 1 was killed, 2 are still in hospital. And last incident occurred yesterday, where two boys, secondary school students, aged 16 and 17, who were on their way to town from the side of Badassa, were killed. And a primary school student is injured and is in hospital. Mr. Speaker, sir, this kind of killing has been on for a long time in this county, but there's nothing which is being done. Mine is just to urge the communities to restrain themselves from taking any other action, because this will lead to more bloodshed, it will be revenge, it will be killing, and will not get out of it. Mr. Speaker, the conflict in Marsabit has been recurring between different communities for a long time. We are all aware that we lost all our elected leaders in a plane crash on 4th of April 2006 while they were on a peace mission, because even by then, these kind of attacks have been there. We are all aware of the Turbi massacre of 2005, and these leaders were on their way to address this kind of issues. Unfortunately, we lost all of them, and we seem not to be learning from that. We know the Moyale constituency had experienced serious fighting between 2012 and 2014, which resulted in fact, even Kenyans becoming refugee in Ethiopia, houses being burned for the first time. This has been recurring. Mr. Speaker, sir, the conflict in Marsabit has been documented, analyzed over a long period of time. I know of about, in my short study of the conflict, I have come across not less than 10 documentations. You go through, they have all analyzed, the causes of conflict are the same, the reason why it's recurring is the same, but because of not it being addressed by the national government, this recurrence has been there. In fact, reports are so clear that they'll tell you very clearly that the causes of these conflicts are mainly political. Devolution, which is supposed to be a blessing to us, people from the marginalized areas, is now becoming our undoing, because what is there is, the whole thing is ethno-political in the sense that communities are fighting each other to gain control of these resources, and that is why people are fighting. First of all, it's that formation of political alliances to gain control. Then there's this issue of people being incited against each other. There's this expansionism tendency of some people because of acquiring more land. Now, from the reports, they're even saying there is now some urban cause of conflict in terms of when you have a governor, then the issue of who gets the contracts, who gets the money comes in. So you have to make sure the governor in place is from your community. So it's becoming another urban source of conflict. And that is what we are experiencing. Mr. Speaker, sir, with all these problems, I'd like to thank the Marsabit Interfaith Council, group of religious leaders from churches and mosques who have come together and have tried to address this issue. I know in September 2018, when this thing started around Orodere, they came in, they called us, all the leaders. We called in the clan elders of those communities involved. We tried to talk to them. These Interfaith Council members have even gone as far as risking their lives, going to those warring communities where some of them come from the other community. They had to still risk their life to go to a community which their community is warring with so that they can preach peace. Unfortunately, me personally, I know now the Interfaith Council, some people has questioned their credibility because of being from, of course, naturally, even if you are from the church, you are from the mosque, you are from that community within the county. Some people have said that these people, we not trust them, they are biased, but me, I have faith in them. I hope they will not lose heart because of that. They will still continue with their work so that we can sit down and see how to bring these warring communities together, how to understand that we all have a short time to live on this world. We cannot take anything anywhere from here. Everybody will end up in the small grave, we all know. So people should not be fighting over land, should not be killing each other because somebody wants to access power. Unfortunately, what is going on is politicians trying to sustain this fight so that when it comes to politics, you say, this guy has not performed, so I need to replace him. While actually you have been playing a lot of dirty games, keeping this guy busy trying to solve peace issues, security issues. So I'd like to urge from this house, from the floor of this house, my fellow politicians, fellow leaders in Marsabit, let's take the life of our people seriously. Let's not make our people fight each other so that we can show somebody has not performed, so that we can use that one as a basis of campaigning. Unfortunately, that is what is happening. The expansionist aspect is also there, but it's being sustained by the fact that the national government is not ready to come and set out these boundaries, even between constituencies, even administrative boundaries. There was a case where we asked the DCC to explain where his district boundary ends. Instead of telling us, he asked the chief to explain. You see, there is that laxity in the government officers to be firm and putting facts straight. Mr. Speaker, sir, the drivers of conflicts are well known by the national government, which has security mandate, which they need to take seriously and conclusively investigate all this coupling. Because one of the reasons why the conflict in Marsabit is recurring is because the national government is not investigating anything. There, in a report, was referred to inadequate, ineffective, insensitive, partisan, and half-hearted action of the national government. The security apparatus is the one which is driving or emboldening these criminals to continue with this. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the case of the 4 students who were killed 2 weeks ago on 8th of June, the county commissioner called in NRT, that is Northern Rangelands Trust, which had sniffer dogs. They tracked the killers to a particular farm, which is known, which has an owner. And instead of from there now arresting the people who are in that farm, up to now you are told investigation is going on, nobody has been arrested. There was a case in 2017 during the election time. Two children who are herding their animals just next to the village in Songa from the Rendile community were hacked. One died, but one survived. A panga which was used, which had blood stain, was collected. They couldn't follow up from there and establish the fingerprints and know who the culprits are. So what is going on is a situation where the government has let the communities to sort out their issues, and that is why, because of lack of the government presence, the communities have resulted to arming themselves. And this is what is going on. There is illegal firearm there, a lot of it, because the government has failed the community. Mr. Speaker, sir, along the way, sometimes back in the early 90s, because of, that's when security started to escalate, the government recruited the Kenya Police Reservists because the police presence is only within the towns. The government recruited the police reservists so that they can provide security to the herdsmen out there when they are herding the animals, when they are moving from one place to another. This has assisted, even in the presence of illegal firearms, these KPRs have assisted to control that because they are locals. If there's an incident like this, they will follow.
Senator, you need to conclude.
I'm concluding, Mr. Speaker. I'm at the last paragraph. Mr. Speaker, sir, sometimes last year, the Cabinet Secretary for Internal Security called leaders from Marsabit and Samburu County and Laikipia County to Nanyuki. He had a meeting with them. And he made his own decision that one of the drivers of conflict are the KPRs, so disarm them. While knowing very well the conflict is caused by the illegal firearm holders. Instead of disarming the illegal firearm holders, he disarmed the one whom he can disarm, the KPRs. And now the illegal firearm holders have a free day. The field day, they are now killing people left, right, center, and the police cannot match them. The police has no that will. So that is why these incidents are escalating. Mr. Speaker, in the light of the above, I will urge the Cabinet Secretary Interior to ensure that the KPRs were armed after proper vetting, which when we asked the county security team, they told us we have done the vetting, we have submitted the names. That was 2 years and it's still lying here and people are killing each other. Like the Songa area, there used to be 10 KPRs who used to patrol that small route where people are killed. Up to now, you can see 6 killings have occurred in a period of 1 week because the illegal gun holders know that there are no KPR, there are no security escorting these people. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to end by saying that at the least, the KPRs who used to patrol between Songa and Badasa, Hula Hula and Karatina needs to be rearmed so that we can control insecurity along those roads while we see what to do with the bigger picture, the other NPRs. Because it's not a small number. Maybe over 2,000 NPRs used to be within the whole county, and they used to supplement security within the community. All those guns gone, now we are at the mercy of illegal gun holders. Mine is that request, and urge also the people of Marsabit to restrain themselves from being pulled into this conflict by whoever is driving it, because what they want is now, the Gabras and the Borans have been fighting, now the Rendiles are being pulled in, all the communities now will be fighting, and by the time it's election time, you don't know who is fighting who. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chila Yaku.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious matter, and my heart goes out to Senator Hargura for the losses and conflict in his county. Now, Mr. Speaker, we were in Parliament, I remember, with George Haniri, Senator Orengo, Professor Ongeri, and other senators here, including the senator for Manyata, when we lost our colleagues because of attempt at getting peace for the people of this sub-county, for the people of this county. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure those who read history remember with nostalgia Senator or Dr. Bonaya Godana, Dr. Galgalo Gurachi Gargaro, Titus Ngoyoni, and also the late husband to our colleague, Senator Naomi Wako. Mr. Speaker, these conflicts are very serious and deadly. And if you go to a place where a conflict of this kind takes place, you will find women and children killed, maimed, raped, because there is nobody paying attention. Mr. Speaker, whole communities are rendered destitute. You will find houses burnt, you will find animals stolen, and you will find a lot of suffering. In fact, when you visit such areas, you will think you are in Lebanon or in the Middle East. You will think that human beings are actually bestial in behavior. So what Senator Argura is raising is something very serious and something that requires attention. We had a similar conflict between my former constituency, Rongo constituency, and South Mugirango. And women, children would camp in churches, they would camp in our homes. We wouldn't have resources to feed them or to take care of them. Similar conflicts continue going on between Migori County among the Abakuria community and the Maasai community of Narok County. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that requires a serious attention. And one of the areas where I noticed the shortcomings of government is that government does not get justice for the victims. You have heard that young persons, university students have been killed. Children continue being killed. So the anger of communities, give birth to desire for vengeance. You will find that communities now arm themselves in a bid to revenge or avenge the killing of their loved ones. And these things snowballs from one crisis to the other until we have a situation that is so dire. So I want to plead with government, if you are a government truly concerned with peace, truly loving all Kenyans, kindly find justice for the people who are affected by this in Mandera, in Wajir, in wherever this conflict is. We already are at the mercy of poverty, we are at the mercy of COVID, and we do not need to entertain, to encourage any other situation that will render majority of Kenyans destitute and lead to leaders taking time that they would have used to serve people to go to such places to try and arbitrate. We lost loved leaders, we lost good leaders on this peace mission, and we want to say enough is enough. We want our government to act and bring solution to this. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Milgo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Let me also contribute to this statement from Senator Arkura. And I used to say that the issues of insecurity is a major challenge, not only to the counties of Marsabit, the counties, that is the counties of the eastern part of Kenya, but all over the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, issues of insecurity has actually claimed lives, poured youthful lives that would have contributed to our economy in the future, as we've had Form 4 students, Standard 8 pupils were killed. That is not the only issue, Mr. Speaker. We have had older people also being killed. We heard recently that there was a businessman, a very powerful businessman in Bungoma being killed in cold blood. We've also had even others being attacked. Like recently, we had a lady that was attacked in Olengruone area in full glare of the security people, where she was tied to a motorbike, and in this case, motorbike driven in the most inhumane way, and in this case, that lady really suffered a lot of injuries. Mr. Speaker, sir, issues around insecurity has been blamed on radicalization. They have been blamed on issues around resources, and even settlement where houses have been burned, cattle have been stolen, and even in this case, even around issues of politics. Mr. Speaker, sir, with all this, even recently, we've been having insecurity issues between narrow counties, and in this case, Bomet County and Nakuru counties, and this form of insecurity has been there since time immemorial. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think this is high time when the department concerned with security should stand up and actually face the challenge, because we are losing several people, particularly with COVID-19. We have people being killed even way beyond the curfew time. And in this case, we are asking ourselves, who actually are killing these people? We have armed people actually moving around in this country and destroying the livelihoods of our people. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think this is many times we have had several statements in this order coming to this House. And in this case, I think the committee concerned should be able to implore upon the Department of Security to actually act to solve this issue once and for all, because we have lost people all the time, and how many people do we want to lose before we actually take action? Especially right now with COVID-19, many people are losing lives. We do not want to lose lives again in issues around insecurity. And in this case, I think there are ways that this can be solved. I think there are many other people roaming around this country even past curfew time, Mr. Speaker, and therefore I think this is blamed squarely on the security department, because we ask ourselves who is moving around past 9. In this case, because we are talking about curfew, and then we are losing people. Mr. Speaker, sir, this statement is very important, and that committee that is going to deal with this statement should actually not only look at Marsabit, but then apply this to all areas across Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We have many statements, so I'll just give two, keep it brief, Senator Kyararge and Senator Kinyo. And Nyamunga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. I want, my heart goes to the people of Marsabit County. We have been seeing the degenerating security situation in that area, and it is disappointing. Quickly, Mr. Speaker, because of the interest of time, under Article 29, the Constitution provides for freedom and security of the person. And I think on this, the government, specifically the Ministry of Interior, has failed on their part, because under the Bill of Rights, Mr. Speaker, it is very clear that security of person and freedom of that person is very critical and very important, Mr. Speaker. And I want to challenge, because even as the lives are being lost, property is being destroyed because of insecurity issues and the state of security in Marsabit County, Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge the government that even as we investigate these criminalities, even as we fight this insecurity situation in Marsabit County, Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon that these families should also be compensated. I don't know, and I hope the Senator of Mandera, my brother Engineer Garura Godana, should come out. My apologies, Senator Godana, or Senator Agura, or some, you know where we come from. Sometimes Speaker has a problem of pronunciation. Senator Godana.
What's your point of order, Senator Sakaja?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very concerned. You know, my brother, Senator Chergai, had an accident, and I hope it didn't affect faculties. Maybe he does not even know my name. Is there a way when a member has such an issue, which of course on a light touch I know is better, but is there a way to just clarify the aptitude that he is back? Because now you will start calling us all manner of names. And Senator Chergai, it's good to see you back. I saw you in a cartoon, I had held you like this. But I hope that that was just a slip of the tongue and you are properly in order and 100% in your faculties. Thank you.
Senator Cherargi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Godana is my neighbor in KICC. We co-share offices, so I know him very, very well. My comment was that I want to assure the House that I'm all fully recovered, and I don't have a problem in my capacity in thinking and speaking. I want to assure that, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, what I wanted to challenge Senator from Marsabit is that let him come with a law or an amendment we can assist him, so that when we lose people through such senseless killings and negligence of the state agencies, we can be able to compensate them. And even we can be able to pursue, I know there is an aspect of pursuing civil suits where we can look for compensation. So I want to challenge my colleague Senator, my neighbor Senator Kodana, that he can still come up with other legislative proposals. Finally, Mr. Speaker, this issue of security situation in the country, and I want to implore you, because you know Kakamega County and Nandi County we co-share. You know a place called Tabolwa, we have been having very erratic tribal clashes along that border, Mr. Speaker. Up to now, there is a statement raised about police killing of Kevin Kipchumba and Boniface Kiprotich in Tabolwa over those tribal clashes. Up to now, Mr. Speaker, because I have been away, maybe I have seen members of National Security Committee. We need to get feedback on the status, because I saw the police commander of this great county saying that since curfew started, the level of crime has come down. And I want to challenge Senator Sakaja. I saw the police commandant of this county, Mr. Speaker, saying the crime rate during this curfew has come down. We need to get the justification, because there are so many judicial killings, until it was reported in one of the leading newspapers in America, Mr. Speaker, that the curfew time has given police an open check and an open license to kill. And I know before, when I used to be the chair of JLAC in this house, Mr. Speaker, we were working closely with the Senator of Nairobi, and we had even wanted to know, why is it that young people are being killed because of extrajudicial killings? I think that one speaks more of the security issue in this country, Mr. Speaker. We have seen even in your county, Bungoma, I happen to know that person that was killed. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we need the Ministry of Interior. I know there is a looming cabinet reshuffle that is coming up. I know the current minister might be moved, but that one should not give any justification. It should not give any justification. Mr. Speaker, you know I'm in government, so as a majority side.
Senator Shionga, what is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the Senator of Nandi to tell us rumors that there is a reshuffle in the government, when actually he's just a senator like us, and he is not in an executive. He's in another arm of the government. The rumors are not good. They are very dangerous, Mr. Speaker. We don't need to go by rumors. Thank you.
Senator Cherargei.
I conclude, Mr. Speaker, because I know this is an emotive issue. As the Senator of the majority side, I am privy of what is happening within the executive, and I said it might. I have not said it shall. So let us be. But my challenge to the Ministry of Interior, I know there is looming cabinet reshuffle. Let me challenge the Cabinet Minister of Interior, Matiang'i, CS Matiang'i, to follow up on this issue so that we can stop lamenting each and every day, so that Marsabit can get justice, so that all of us, Kevin, Boniface from Nandi, and even the people of Ikoli, here in Kakamega County, Mr. Speaker, along where we co-share the border, we need to resolve those issues. And I want to challenge my quick recovery wishes to the people who got a helicopter accident the other day when they were going to that part to try and resolve. Let us also see in the part of Kisumu and Nandi, let us see in the part of Tabolwa, the part of Nandi and Kakamega. Mr. Speaker, finally, I want to challenge the new majority leader in the National Assembly, Honorable Kimunya, that he needs to ensure that the county boundaries bill that we have proposed as the Senate, I think by Minority Whip Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., I don't know whether he's now minority, I am told he has moved to majority side, to fast track, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude.
Senator Cherargei, I'm tempted to believe what Senator Sakaja was saying, because you seem to be sleeping so many times. Please conclude.
Let me conclude. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge the majority leader, the new majority leader in the National Assembly, that let us work together. For example, the county boundaries bill should have assisted in resolving, like what we're having in Maseno area, what we have in my sister, we share the boundaries, Senator Rose Nyamunga, what we're having with Senator Cleophas Malala. Let us try and fast track, because, Mr. Speaker, when Aden Duale was being moved yesterday, it has realized these positions are temporary. So you need to use it for the benefit of all of us. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator Kinyua, finally.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask to support the statement by Senator Hagura. Mr. Speaker, there is any viable development that can be attained without security, Mr. Speaker. It is disturbing because every time we rise in this house and we talk about security, we have never gotten any feedback exactly what's happening. I have listened several times on matters security in Laikipia, and today I'm seeing the vice chair of the committee here, and I hope maybe he can elaborate exactly what's happening in that committee, because they don't give any information, Mr. Speaker. You are the vice chair? The last time I checked, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of insecurity, this insecurity is even very rampant in Laikipia, Mr. Speaker. After, I don't know where the government, the thinking of the government of withdrawing NPR, Mr. Speaker. The NPR, the ones that were in Laikipia, Mr. Speaker, were doing a great job. And I hope the same case applies to Marsabit, Mr. Speaker, because I've talked to the member. The NPR know the terrain of the area, Mr. Speaker. The NPR, Mr. Speaker, are aware of what's happening on the ground. They have intelligence. But when they were withdrawn, Mr. Speaker, the insecurity in the areas increased, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the areas in Laikipia, like areas of Wangwashi, Rufere, Matwiku, Milimani, Ngenia, Ormora, and Dodo, Mr. Speaker, have had these every other time, Mr. Speaker. The Katarastra, they attack every other time, but when we had NPRs, Mr. Speaker, they were reacting very quickly, and at least we could recover our animals, and that we could have some of these Katarastras arrested. But Mr. Speaker, after withdrawing the NPR, now we are not getting any value for money, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we were told by then that ballistic tests will be done, Mr. Speaker, for the arms they were having. Mr. Speaker, we were told then the vetting will be done and they will be reinstated, Mr. Speaker. But we have been waiting in vain. All what we are getting is that our animals are being stolen, our women are being raped, and our houses are being touched, Mr. Speaker. And the police officers, I think, to where I sit, Mr. Speaker, they don't have capacity. Because in some areas, when you go to some areas like in Laikipia Nature Conservancy, the police officers say they cannot enter that place, Mr. Speaker, because that is, there is a lot of, it's very bushy, and then they have just come to work, they have not come to ensure that we have our animals, Mr. Speaker. So I would recommend, Mr. Speaker, to the committee, when they are bringing the report of this statement, they should tell us when are we expecting back the NPR to be reinstated, Mr. Speaker, and if there are operations that have to be conducted, Mr. Speaker, because operations will be the best thing so that we can disarm these illegal the illegal firearm holders, and we only allow the police officers to be having those guns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next statement is from Senator Shionga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make a statement on an issue of general topical concern regarding the brutalization of Miss Mercy Cherono by the police officers in Kuresoi South, Nakuru County. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 47-1, I wish to make the following statement regarding the dehumanization of one, Mrs. Mercy Cherono, who was tracked on the pathway by a police officer in Olengurueni in Nakuru County. Mr. Speaker, sir, it was traumatic to watch a video clip showing Ms. Cherono being tracked on the streets of Olengurueni while tied with a rope on a motorbike, or on the motorbike. While sympathizing with Ms. Cherono, I also applaud her, fortunate, because when I watched her on the television, I saw a courageous woman, young woman, who had experienced a barbaric and inhuman act, but she resolutely survived. It was beyond comprehension that the police officer held Ms. Cherono for more than 200 meters before she was rescued by the members of the public and rushed to Olengurueni Sub-County Hospital for treatment on the June 7th, 2020. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a result of this peaceful act, Ms. Cherono sustained a broken leg, head, and soft tissue injuries. Mr. Speaker, we must stamp our authority to ensure that Ms. Cherono gets justice, because justice for Cherono, or justice for Ms. Mercy Cherono, will be justice for Kenyans, whom the police have brutalized since the inception of the nationwide curfew. To quote Mrs. Cherono's mother, in seeking for justice, she says, and I quote, "Why did the officer want to kill my daughter? All I need is justice to be served." End of quote. Citizens across the across the nation are suffering at the hands of the police officers, who on the daily basis, as we are discussing here, are assaulting and mistreating them. In Nakuru County alone, more than 8 cases of police brutality have been reported, not to mention those that go unreported because of fear of reputation. Mr. Speaker, sir, the National Police Service Commission and the Independent Police Oversight Authority, IPOA, should enumerate steps taken so far to punish the perpetrators. In particular, the National Police Service Commission should state the identity of the police officer and the compliance in the Kuresoi South incident. In addition, the Police Service Commission should explain the process of investigation involving other cases of police brutality across the country that have been on the rise since the curfew was instituted, and publicize the report, if any, detailing measures taken by the National Police Service Commission, the employer, in establishing the root cause of the rising cases of police brutality. Mr. Speaker, on my statement, I would wish to add that we have had a lot of cases here on police brutality. If anyone watched that video, Mr. Speaker, it is sad. This 21-year-old Cherono needs to get justice and needs to assist. The police need to assist us in protecting the citizens of Kenya other than killing our citizen. It goes without unsaid of what we have discussed here the better part of this morning. The business will not be as usual for the police officers to come or to be summoned by the committee to come and tell us the usual of what they are doing. And mentioning the names and leave people scot-free. We have the police independent oversight, and we need detailed report, as I have stated in my statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Were, what's your point of order, Senator Kinyo?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in our standing orders, Article 193(2), it says that whenever a vacancy occurs in the office of the chairperson or vice chairperson of select committee, the clerk shall, within 7 days of vacancy arising, appoint a place, date, and time of meeting of the committee to elect the vice chair, the chairperson or the vice chairperson. Mr. Speaker, when I was contributing to the statement of Hagura, I heard that the vice chair of security resigned as last year, Mr. Speaker. There has never been election, and our standing orders are very clear, Mr. Speaker. And the same statement is the statement from Naomi Shionga, Senator Naomi Shionga. It's a security matter, Mr. Speaker. So we are looking for your guidance, Mr. Speaker, because it seems, or to me, the way things are flowing, it seems you're not going to get answers from this statement, Mr. Speaker.
I think there will be committees later on in the afternoon. We shall have newly constituted committees. I think that should be able to address your concerns. Senator Petronila Were.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support.
What's your point of order, Senator Cherargei?
Mr. Speaker, on the issue we had raised on the issue of security issues, because up to now there are 1 or 2 statements that we had raised with the Security Committee, but we had instructed that by last week Tuesday there are some statements that you needed feedback, especially the one I had raised concerning those 2 young men that were killed. And Senator Sakaja at that point said he is no longer the vice chair of National Security Committee. So I hope, since the whip is here, Mr. Speaker, we should be able to move with speed so that we can be able to conclude those issues. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, noted. Senator Were. What's your point of information, Senator Sakaja?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inform Senator Were in the House. Indeed, because I think there's a lack of clarity, and if Kenyans are just listening, they might think I am a very lazy vice chair of security. I resigned a long time ago, months ago, not for any bad reason, but because, Mr. Speaker, I like being very effective. And I'm the chair of Labor, and Senator Musuruve will tell you I'm very effective in Labor and Corona Committee. So I wanted to focus on those 2 committees. Even Senator Milgo will tell you she's my vice chair. However, Mr. Speaker, subsequent to that, because I would still have supported the committee, I was de-whipped by the former leadership. So, you know, I was then de-whipped. So I want to encourage Millicent Omanga, Senator Cherargei, Senator Nderitu. This de-whipping started in the last regime because I was de-whipped by Senator Murkomen and Senator Kihika. So please just be courageous, be strong. Book of Joshua 1:9. Be strong. But Mr. Speaker, I think the question raised is important because that committee is extremely sensitive and important, Security Committee. Of all the statements that come to this House, maybe 40 to 50% are for that committee. And we know the chair of that committee, Senator Haji. Senator Haji is quite busy with the BBI. I would like to urge, because I can see the leadership here, Senator Faria and Senator Dulo, please make sure you get another vice chair as serious as the former one. Because that committee needs... Senator Maruma will tell you when we went to Taita Taveta, on my own we sorted issues, though of course they recurred. I've gone to Isiolo, I've done like 10 county visits as security. But please, and if you can't get another vice chair, take me back there. But I won't be vice chair, but I will help for the sake of our country.
Senator Petronila, continue.
Thank you, Chair. I want to support the statement by Senator Shionga on the mistreatment vested upon Mercy Cherono in Olengoroni of Nakuru County. Mr. Speaker, this is related to the statement that was presented by Senator Hagura on the extrajudicial killings or extrajudicial behavior by our police service. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to say one thing, that maybe as a country we need to relook at the content of the training of our police service. What is it exactly are they trained on? So such that all over, across the country, in all stations in this country, the behavior of the police is similar. What are they told they are going to do out here? Because if you're dragging a young woman across a long distance and everyone is trying to talk to you, telling you that that's the wrong thing you're doing, making her go through very serious body injuries. What exactly is going on into the minds of our police force? So I joined my colleague Senator Shionga and other members to call upon, although this statement is under 47.1, to call upon you to direct this statement to the relevant committee so that other issues other than just Mercy Cherono are handled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Farhia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I think police brutality is going to a different level. What kind of a human being are you? I mean, what kind of crime did this lady commit until you're dragging her with a motorbike and treating her in such an inhumane manner? Mr. Speaker, such few rotten apples are spoiling the reputation of a police force that is particularly there to protect our citizens. And Mr. Speaker, I think they need to be dealt with, precisely, because otherwise we will have the similar police brutality that we have, like in America, that caused upheavals. Like, for example, the Black Lives Matter. We don't want to go to that level. And we know there are so many good police officers. Like I saw the other day, a lady and a man police officer who are giving wheelchair to a disabled person in Mombasa. And I think such people need to be recognized. But those few people who are very good, their reputation is ruined by people who have no business even interacting with human beings, Mr. Speaker, because they are so inhuman. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank Senator Shionga for bringing this to fore so that this matter can be dealt with precisely, so that the otherwise good name of the police is protected because there is someone dealing with this matter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Just to add my voice to the already very many voices speaking on this matter of insecurity. Insecurity is a very big component of any society, and it is a problem all over the world. Mr. Speaker, it's so disheartening that the insecurity that we have in this country, I mean, most of the time it is instigated by us, by the people themselves. Because if it's not about the land, it's about politics, it's about the cattle, it's about each and every one of us. But Mr. Speaker, what is more disheartening is that insecurity now, it has escalated from the villages to, say, to the provinces, villages, and now it is with us in our homes. What has happened to this Cherono in Nakuru County is not one thing that you even want to imagine. It's almost similar to what we saw in the US, and also you can watch it in another video that happened in this country about a year ago. A policeman stepping, and with a hand, one hand is holding a pistol, and on his legs is stepping on somebody else. It is something that happens in this country, in America, but it is unfortunate. I know security should be about ourselves, but now looking at the COVID problem that we have had in this nation, look at what is happening in our homes. The insecurity that we experience in homes, young children being molested by their own relatives, their fathers, their brothers. I watched a woman cry that her own son has impregnated 2 daughters, and they are all teenagers. It has been unfortunate that as a nation we go through such a thing, that insecurity is with us, with the young babies, with our women, with our girls. It is unfortunate that you can experience it out there about leadership and land, but you also experience it in our homes with the people that should give us security. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the policemen are doing a great job, and we cannot underrate what the policemen or the security system is doing in this country or any other place. But it is unfortunate that a few are destroying the good work that is being done by the government. I know the government is spending a lot of money on security, but look at what is still happening. What is heartening me most is in our homes with our children, and then going out to the women and to anybody else. So I would like to urge the police force and to urge the government and the Ministry of Interior that we know they are doing something, but let more be done. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sakaja.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Senator Naomi Shionga has brought an important statement. And it's very important that and that's why I raised the issue of the committee, that we reflect on these issues. Mr. Speaker, the police service changed from the police force. It used to be called the police force, the National Police Force. It changed and became the National Police Service, meaning it was now about, or it should be about, utumishi kwa wote, in quotes. Mr. Speaker, the Inspector General has really been trying to reform the police, and we must give him accolades, starting from the former, from Boynet, and now Mutiambai. Yesterday, in fact, he was online, talking to Kenyans about the issues there. There are few rotten elements within the police force. And Mr. Speaker, we shouldn't do a mob lynching of the entire police force, police service, because there are very many good officers in this country, extremely good. These are people who put their lives on the line for us. These are people who risk their lives daily. Many of them, Mr. Speaker, don't live in a dignity, in a life of dignity that is commensurate to the sacrifice they make for this country. But there are few of them within the police force who are giving that police service, rather, a very bad name. Mr. Speaker, a few months ago, I brought a statement here about Yasin Moyo, a 13-year-old boy who was killed in Kiamaiko. Yasin Moyo was a young boy when they just started implementing the curfew at the balcony of his home. Mr. Speaker, when your children are at home, you know they are at the safest place they can be. They're at home. In the balcony, he wasn't outside. He wasn't going against curfew. He wasn't a 13-year-old boy. A police officer, Patrick Ndiema, angled his gun because they have the light, and aimed at that young boy at the balcony, Mr. Speaker, and shot him. And the young boy told his mother, I have been shot. The mother thought it's a joke and said, hey, unakuanga na mchezo sana. The boy died shortly thereafter. Mr. Speaker, when that incident happened, after I brought the statement to this house, I spoke to the Inspector General. He gave me his chief protocol officer. And I went to Kemaiko with the Inspector General's officers, with support from the Ministry of Interior, to sit with the community and the people and to say pole. And at least they gave something, just to say pole to the family. But I told them, that boy will never come back because of one rogue officer. Mr. Speaker, today I'm happy that Patrick Ndiema today has been charged in court. He's been charged with murder. Mr. Speaker, we've had other cases in Korogosho. We had a case in Kasarani of a young boy called Nandwa who was killed during the protests for the road. And when we sorted that issue out, because, Mr. Speaker, I had to now summon, because the protests were so many, I called the district, Deputy County Commissioner, or the DCC, the security team of Kasarani. I called the Kura Director General, Mr. Kinoti. All of them, summoned them to my office at KICC. We sat with the Matatu owners, all the circles in Kasarani, and we agreed on what to do with the road. It took long, but now the contract has been given. And when we went back to the ground, we told them, Mr. Speaker, that yes, the road will be done, but that young man will never come back to life. That officer also must be charged. The officer involved in Cherono's case must be charged. The few elements spoiling the very good name of the police service should not make us think that Kenyan police service is like what we are seeing in the US. It's a few of them, it's not all of them. Mr. Speaker, we must also be able to encourage those who are doing a good job. But, Mr. Speaker, those who are doing a bad job, those who are still in the olden days of police brutality, must be brought to book. Mr. Speaker, today, and it's the same thing we said even in Kiamaiko, that yes, and the Wananchi also said themselves, they confessed. Because, Mr. Speaker, the other side to this is the people must also behave well. I told them, because they actually said that it is true, we were the ones stoning the police first, we were throwing for them water from our balconies, and a police officer must protect his life. And they're afraid. But, Mr. Speaker, that is no guarantee or no justification for the loss of any life. So we told them, and I want to tell the people of Kenya, for us to have a responsible police force, let us also, as people of Kenya, be responsible from the days of haki yetu to wajibu wetu. And then we can have a good society. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for directing that those committee changes be done. And I've seen the eminent leader of majority, Pogisho Losuron, Samuel, has come in. Make sure, Senator Pogisho, that you give that committee a very serious chair and vice chair. Because these issues are very critical. And at this time of our country's history, Mr. Speaker, we want a very responsible police service. We have a good IG. We vetted him. Mr. Speaker, that's one of the vettings that the Senate is involved in. We vetted Mutiambai. And I remember doing that vetting, there were very many members from Eastern who attended, incidentally, as friends of the committee. And we said, is it a coincidence that the members from Mukambani have attended? Because you should not make Mutiambai a Mukamba IG. He is an IG for Kenya. And so far, I think he's done well. But please, IG Mutiambai, because you will get this answered. Reform the police service. The Senate will support you. And weed out the rogue officers. Don't protect them. I'm glad today Patrick Ndiema has been charged with the murder of Yasin. And we promise them that we'll get justice, even if it was through us ourselves paying for a legal suit. And we're holding brief. We have lawyers in that court case, in that courtroom today, who are watching brief to make sure that justice is applied to all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Zawadi.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Nami vile nimesimama pia nikiunga mkono wenzangu kwa yale wanaojadili kwamba polisi tumekosa haki ama tumekosa imani kwa polisi, na si kwamba ni polisi wote kama vile wenzangu wanavyozungumzia, lakini kusema ukweli nidhamu imekosekana mahali fulani. Kuna utepetevu mahali fulani katika idara ya polisi ambapo wengi tumekosa imani nao. Ni juzi tu nikiwa naenda nyumbani Kilifi, nikifika Kilifi kabla sijaingia nyumbani ilikuwa ni jioni, inapata kama saa 2 na saa 3 ilikuwa karibu. Na sasa tunaona kwamba kuna sheria ya kwamba saa 3 watu wako manyumbani. Nikiwa sijaingia kwa nyumba ndio ninaelekea kumeshika barabara kwenda nyumbani, nilikuta polisi wakifukuza mtu. Na huyo mtu alipita kwa mbele ya hiyo gari ambayo nilikuwa niko ndani. ikasimamishwa ghafla hiyo gari na nikashuka. Niliposhuka nikasimamisha hiyo polisi walikuwa wanafukuza huyo mtu. Nikamwambia, kwa nini mnamfukuza? Atunamfukuza kwa sababu sisi saa hii saa 3 inakaribia na bado wako kwa njia. Na venye mmemfukuza na amepita hivyo mbio kwa gari. Kama gari ingemgonga ni vipi ungekuwa mmemsaidia na hiyo sheria ambayo iko? Kwa nini mfukuze mtu? Kwa nini msipeane hiyo ufahamisho watu wajue? Ndio huko watu wanajua, na hata kama mtu amekosa hiyo ufahamisho na mtu anakimbia, ni kumaanisha kwamba amejua kwamba amekosea na anakimbia ili kufika nyumbani kabla ile sheria haijampata kwa njia. Lakini bado wanachukua sheria mikononi mwao, polisi wanafanya vile wanataka. Na mimi nikiwa natoka Kilifi, kule ni sehemu ya bahari na kuna maji. Na kuna msemo ambao unasema, ni kweli sio polisi wote, lakini msemo huu unasema, nishike samaki 10, nishike samaki mmoja, harufu yangu ni ile ile ya samaki. Haitasema ati harufu yangu nimeshika samaki mmoja ama samaki 10. Itakuwa harufu ni ile ile. Kwa hivyo polisi wawe wazuri wawe vipi, lakini sisi tumekosa imani na polisi, idara yao imeoza na kuna utepetevu wa nidhamu na kuchukuliwe haki kutoka kwao. Kwa sababu hata wao nao, akiuliwa mmoja na jamii, utaona polisi force yote inatoka na kupiga watu wao mtaa mzima kulaliki, ati askari wao mmoja alipigwa. Lakini wanaua watu wetu kila siku na hakuna kitu kinafanyika. Ni mmoja katika askari 100 ndio utaona kuna sheria imechukuliwa dhidi yake, lakini wengi wanapotelea. Mwingine anaondolewa transfer, anapelekwa mahali pengine, anaolewa mahali alikuwa amefanya makosa. Ni makosa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Ukishika samaki mmoja, samaki 10, harufu ni ile ile. Polisi wawe na nidhamu.
Senator Falhada, then Musuruve, we conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on the important statement brought by my colleague, Senator Shionga. This is a really, really sad situation. Police brutality is worldwide. It's not something that is new, Mr. Speaker. In this case of this poor woman, when she was tied to the motorbike and was dragged along the town, it reminds me of South Africa when they were committing the xenophobic act, where they tie people and ban them. But in this situation, this woman should have justice. Justice must be done for this poor woman who was dragged and tied to a motorbike, and her clothes were torn apart, her privates were showing. It is really, really sad. And I need justice to be done for this woman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator Musuruve, then Senator Susan Kihika, we conclude.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to support this statement. And I want to congratulate Senator Naomi Shionga for coming up with this statement. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, the police officer who did this act came out strongly as being brutal, callous, feelingless. He had no feelings at all. And it is unfortunate that even when he was doing that, the public around him were also watching. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, and without any fear, that there is need to really, really review the curriculum of police officers. And I want to say that even during their training, an aspect of human feeling needs to be incorporated in the curriculum. Because once they are out of their forces, they are so detached from civilian life. Some of them have no feelings at all, and there is need to really look at how the curriculum is, and even see to it that units that bring feelings are incorporated in their training. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is unfortunate that Cherono's dignity was actually brought down. It is unfortunate that she was treated in a very, very humiliating way, and even her bones were broken, and there's need for her to be compensated. And there's need also for justice to be done for this family and for Cherono, and this justice should not be delayed. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, before this House, seriously, there is need to ensure that the policeman who did this heinous act is brought to book so that he can serve as an example to others of what it means to flout the ethics. Every profession has ethics, and I'm certain that even police officers have ethics, and those who flout these ethics should be brought to book so that they do not soil the name of police officers. And Honorable Speaker, lastly, just allow me to say this, that there are also police officers who have a human touch. They do acts that are really godly, and they should be acknowledged. Even sometimes during the presidential awards, let them be acknowledged for what they have done. Like I saw in Nakuru, there's a police officer who actually bought a wheelchair and gave a disabled person the wheelchair. Such acts should be brought by even our media. When the media is setting the agenda even for police officers, let them also set the agenda for those policemen and those police ladies who do us glory by, helping others. There was even a lady, a police officer, who even helped someone, a lady who had a baby carried on her back during this curfew period. She helped this woman out, and she was able to reach home well. So there's need also for us to ensure that the agenda is not only about brutality, but the agenda is also about rewarding those who do their work diligently, so that others can also emulate, the good workers and crave to be acknowledged even nationally. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity.
Senator Susan Kihika.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I also support the statement. It was actually really horrifying to see a police officer drag a human being, a woman, in Olenguruoni, Kuresoi South, Nakuru County. Mr. Speaker, Ms. Mercy Cherono suffered injuries, deep injuries. She was also humiliated, but also what surprised me a bit is how much the public has become desensitized to this sort of treatment. I mean, you had people standing, just recording, watching as this was happening. I believe that the police must do better. Otherwise, we shall have an uprising of the people like we have seen in America in the last few weeks. Police brutality has been going on for a while. I actually remember bringing a statement some time back when a member of parliament for Nakuru Town East, Mheshimiwa Honorable Gikaria, was assaulted horribly by police officers until he became unconscious a few months ago. So saying this, but also recognizing and acknowledging that there are good police officers in the police force. But the actions of the few rotten, bad police officers are really eroding public confidence in law enforcement in the country. So we must have better training, better sensitization of these police officers, and to their superiors, changing the color of uniform does not equal reform in the police force. So we must see better, and we must have better training. And with the continued assault of citizens of Kenya, like we saw even at the beginning of Corona, with the curfews and all, we have witnessed over time a lot of police brutality. This will eventually make it untenable to support the police in this country or to respect them. And this will make the jobs of the good ones very unsafe as well. So I'm also urging that there must be reform. We must see punishment of these involved police officers. They must not be transferred or told to stay home for a few months and then returned back to the force and life goes on as usual. So there must be some holding of some accountability, and we must see justice done for Mercy Cherono. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, finally, Leader of Majority.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, just to support the statement that has been brought here by a sister who has asked us to talk about this very serious matter, Speaker, of police brutality. Mr. Speaker, the policeman who shot the boy, the young kid who was in the balcony of their house, as narrated by the Nairobi senator, the policeman who dragged this lady called Mercy Cherono, and those who do such heinous things, as have been enumerated here, Speaker, are no different from the policeman who choked George Floyd in the US to death by putting his knee on George's neck and waiting for 8 minutes, Mr. Speaker, for a man to die and would not believe that he had died. That same policeman in the US was charged with second-degree murder. Why not? Any policeman who kills a person. And Mr. Speaker, if they have a situation where they have been proved to be guilty, Mr. Speaker, I think they should just face the law. But on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, we must celebrate that our police force is undergoing reform. We must celebrate that. I think, Mr. Speaker, what our duty is as a House is to ensure that money goes to the police force or the police service for reforms. Because, Mr. Speaker, as human beings, you have bad ones and you have good ones. And many examples of good police have been shared in this House, Mr. Speaker. And I remember one policewoman, Mr. Speaker, who is in a very remote place in Marakwet. You have heard of her story, Mr. Speaker, who makes face masks and distributes them for free. And she goes around giving them for free. Those are people we should celebrate. But, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to emphasize the need for a police reform, not only here. Police reform needs to be done everywhere in the world, but for our country. We think, Mr. Speaker, because now, Mr. Speaker, we are hiring better educated people to join the police force. They can be trained even in ICT, they can be trained in psychology, they can be trained in different ways to deal with human beings. Mr. Speaker, I think we have a chance here to reform the police service. And so I think just that while we condemn these few ones, we must also, Mr. Speaker, think, how do we help those that can help our people? Because we need the police everywhere, we need them. They are a helpful service to us. And so, Mr. Speaker, while we hope that these bad ones can be brought to book, we also hope that we can vote more monies and help those that can be trained, Mr. Speaker, to be better police. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Honorable Senators, because of the importance of the ad hoc committee report, I will rearrange the order paper kidogo so that we call the chair ad hoc committee on COVID-19 situation. That's under standing order number 51-1. Then time allowing, we'll come back. Senator Sakaja.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 51-1 to make a statement relating matters for which the ad hoc committee is responsible, which is namely the consideration of several requests for statements directed to this committee, the ad hoc committee on the COVID-19 situation. Mr. Speaker, there are a few, and I'll go very quickly. The first statement, Mr. Speaker, was on the dismissal and demotion of Dr. Joel Lutomia from the position of Director, Center for Virus Research at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. This statement was sought by Senator Malala and Senator Were, who is here, a very strong member from ANC. In the statement, the two senators sought to find out, among others, the reasons for the demotion of Dr. Lutomia from his position and whether due process was followed. We wrote to the ministry, we received a written response on the 26th. In the response, the ministry stated that Dr. Lutomia had not been sacked, but had been relieved from that specific position of Deputy Director and Head of Center for Virus Research, and it was attributed to an alleged delay in collecting and transmitting COVID-19 test results from all Cambridge testing centers to the Ministry of Health on time. The ministry further indicated that Dr. Lutomia was due to present his side of view to the Human Resource Committee of the Kemri Board. Mr. Speaker, we considered this matter, and we invited both Senator Melala and Senator Were. We heard from Dr. Lutomia on the circumstances himself. We actually invited him. The guy was fired, or rather demoted. And the detailed response has been shared with both senators. Mr. Speaker, the preliminary observations of the committee is as follows. That the demotion of Dr. Lutomia was carried out in a rushed and unprocedural manner, did not comply with provisions of the Constitution, the Fair Administrative Action Act number 5 of 2015, as well as various guidelines, protocols, and manuals governing disciplinary action. Without going into details of those allegations, Mr. Speaker, we heard that on the material day, Dr. Lutomia was alleged to have delayed collation and transmission of test results to the Ministry of Health, and by evening of the same day, he had been dismissed from his position. He was neither given the opportunity to be heard, nor taken through a disciplinary process before the decision to dismiss him from the position was made. This was despite the officer having had an illustrious career at Kemri before the said incident, without having any performance or disciplinary issue raised against him. Mr. Speaker, because of this, we've invited the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry for Health, and the Director General of Kemri to a meeting with the committee on Thursday. And I want to invite Senator Malala and Senator Were to join us in this said meeting. Mr. Speaker, as we've said before, this is the time during the fight against COVID for us to encourage, for us to support our frontline workers, not to embitter them and not to discourage them. And Mr. Speaker, during this time, it is time for us to really give them team morale, for us to really support what they're doing. So anyway, we will meet them, and Senator Were, please attend this meeting online. I'll send you the details, as well as Senator Malala. There was a question, Mr. Speaker, by Senator Enoch Wambua on restriction of movement of persons and related measures in and out of Nairobi metropolitan area. The senator sought to find out the criteria used to determine the location of roadblocks in effecting the restriction of movement into and out of Nairobi metropolitan area. This was on account of ensuring continuity in operations of factories and other industries located along Mombasa and Kangundo roads, which depend on workers who reside outside the Nairobi metropolitan area. We wrote to the Ministry of Interior and received a written response on the 26th of May. In the response, the ministry stated that the location was informed by the need to contain as much as possible the population of the metropolitan area. Mr. Speaker, we considered this matter during a sitting on the 5th of June, during which Senator Wambua himself was present in our committee. And arising for this, we resolved to engage further the Ministry of Interior on this issue, and Senator Wambua was in agreement, unless he says otherwise, and he's not present. So he shall hold his peace, but we shall still engage him on this issue. Because his rationale was the borders into Kambani are many more kilometers than the ones into other parts. Yet the Nairobi metropolitan area has been mapped out, and there are reasons around that. And it made sense, Mr. Speaker, in our opinion. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, by Senator Malala again, exclusion of health administrative officers from payment of COVID-19 medical emergency funds, allowance and benefits for frontline health workers. He asked why health administrative officers were omitted from the list forwarded by SRC to Treasury and the Council of Governors regarding payment of COVID-19 medical emergency allowance and benefits for frontline health workers. Of course, Mr. Speaker, as you know, we are an effective committee. We wrote to SRC. They gave us a response, and they indicated that there was a suit on this matter, petition number 77 of 2020, filed in the Employment and Labor Relations Court by the Kenya Association of Health Administrators, and they are named as a respondent, and because of sub judice, Mr. Speaker, the pleadings were shared with us. And having noted that the subject was substantially the same in the suit, Mr. Speaker, we've deferred it, but we are watching how the court moves. We are still keen on it, that all health workers must benefit from the package that is being given to really boost their morale at this time of COVID. Mr. Speaker, there was the impact of COVID on prevention and control of other diseases, again by Senator Were. She's really asking us many things, Mr. Speaker. She's over asking. But Mr. Speaker, I'm encouraged because she knows how committed we are, and she's doing her work as a representative of the people. She asked, she wanted to find out the measures put in place by national and county governments to integrate malaria prevention and control interventions in COVID-19 on the basis that as the country focused resources and attention on COVID, other diseases were being ignored. And other issues of public concern continue to affect citizens and lead to increased mortality. We wrote to the ministry, Mr. Speaker, and we considered this during a meeting on the 5th of June. We later received a response from the ministry. We shared the response with the Senator. I hope you got it. The issues raised are still scheduled for further consideration because we, as a COVID committee, we have a regular meeting with the Ministry of Health. We agreed with them that we shall be meeting them every so often because it's a rapidly evolving situation. Instead of just calling them once, in a week, in 2 weeks, things change. So we are having very good relations, and I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, because the liaison there is one Rose Mudibo, who was my clerk in the Committee of Security, and now she is in the Ministry of Health. So she is still as effective as she was when she was here, and we're getting a lot of support from the ministry. And she's been seconded by Parliament. And this minister is also a former senator, so we are really doing well. Mr. Speaker, lastly, okay, not lastly, second last, there was an issue on challenges experienced in Isiolo County. Senator Dulo is here regarding COVID preparedness. She sought to ascertain legitimacy of launch of 13 ICU beds and HDU beds by the county government and preparedness and expenditure incurred by the county government in responding to COVID-19. We considered this matter on the 5th of June, Mr. Speaker, and Senator Dulo was present. Then, noting the nature of information, Mr. Speaker, we resolved to actually go to Isiolo and Meru. And Mr. Speaker, we went. The COVID committee went to Isiolo County with Senator Dulo, together with the members of the committee. We had a very good number. We also went to Meru. During the committee, we met with human rights defenders from Isiolo, who recorded the movement of equipment from Galaxy Hospital, a private hospital, to Isiolo County Referral Hospital. We reviewed the evidence presented by the citizens, had testimonies for them. Then we met with the representatives of frontline health workers, the doctors themselves. We listened to their issues. And then we met with the governor and the county commissioner, as well as the entire team from Isiolo, Mr. Speaker. We've analyzed those issues that arose from this visit. We've written to the county governor again to respond to some of those specific issues. And also, Mr. Speaker, we'll be meeting the governor this week to now give his full responses. Because, Mr. Speaker, because of the day, how it was planned, we didn't fully finish by evening, even by the time we went to hospital, Senator Dulo. So we want them to give us the documentation of each and every expenditure, where they got the beds from, the equipment from. Incidentally, we actually saw there was ICU equipment and there were beds. Meru County does not have. And Meru is a big brother of Isiolo. But still, we want to know that everything was done properly. Mr. Speaker, we gave a report in this House that every county government will be sending monthly expenditure reports on COVID-19 to this House. Every county government must give us expenditure reports during this time, and even the national government. Because during this time, Mr. Speaker, many people are using the loophole of emergency procurement to actually engage in games. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll be meeting the governor, and I invite again Senator Dulo. Senator Abshiro is a member of the committee, and anybody interested as well from Meru and Isiolo to come and join us in that meeting. Again, Senator Were, Mr. Speaker. Again, on welfare support for unionizable employees affected by COVID, Senator Were is overworking. She sought to find out the amount contributed towards the funds by COTU, the Central Organization of Trade Unions, and its 41 affiliate unions, and how the said funds have been applied. Mr. Speaker, we have written to COTU. We're waiting for the response, and we'll present an exhaustive, substantive report during the next sitting, and we'll invite again Senator Were. Maybe you should just be a member. You should be a member of our committee, Senator Were.
What's your point of order, Senator Were?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank Senator Sakaja for the good work they are doing, and more questions will be coming, so do not get tired of my overwork. But however, Mr. Speaker, when I gave this statement on the welfare support for unionizable employees, I also wanted this to go beyond COVID-19 as an emergency, but also other emergencies. How are they using the emergency fund to respond to other emergencies? COVID was just one of them, and I had directed or requested for direction for this statement to go to the Committee of Labor, where Senator Sakaja again is an able chair, and I'm a member of that committee. So if at all this could as well, so that the long-term response or the long-term solutions to this issue go beyond COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I just want to tell Senator Were that when I say she's overworking, it is disguised praise. she's actually doing an excellent job. So, Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak to the Chair of Labour and agree with the Chair of Labour on, on how to deal with that matter jointly with the Chair of COVID, Mr. Speaker. Incidentally, the Chair of Labour is also Sakaja, so we shall agree today. And Were is also a member of the Committee of Labour. The final one, Mr. Speaker, because I see time is not on our side, was a statement by Senator Perino regarding the sharing of 5 billion conditional grant, and she actually raises a very important question each senator should be keen on. She says, Mr. Speaker, the statement that she sought was to find out the criteria used to share the 5 billion grant to county governments towards COVID-19 response, and why consideration was not given to counties with higher COVID-19 incidents, as well as those with underdeveloped healthcare infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I remember I brought a report, the third progress report, and today, and Mr. Speaker, we've done now 8 progress reports. The third one was about the fact on health issues that 27 counties in this country don't have a single ICU facility. So Senator Perino's question was very key to say, how are we then dividing the 5 billion? We engaged with the Ministry of Health and and Council of Governors, where it was established that the conditional grant was disbursed to counties through the Ministry of Health on the basis of the revenue allocation formula determined by CRA. Mr. Speaker, I think that was poor thinking. And I'm glad the Leader of Majority has listened, because the criteria to give counties money, generally, the one we do here, should not be the same criteria to distribute money during a pandemic. It is not about land, it is not about population, it is not about poverty index or fiscal discipline. It's about dealing with a pandemic. A county like Migori, for instance, or Kajiado, or the border counties might need more allocation, or Busia, than counties which might have bigger populations but are less vulnerable, Mr. Speaker. And so we said that was a bit lazy from the side of government, and we're engaging, because you see the impact of using the existing formula was that some counties that have already recorded very many cases received far lesser allocations than counties which are yet to record a single case. For instance, Mr. Speaker, and I don't know why this example was put, I know Senator Nyandarua might be upset with me, and Isiolo, but they say Isiolo, which has 7 cases, Mr. Speaker, has received 16 million. But Nyandarua, with no case, has received 89 million. Kajiado, which has 177 cases, received 52 million, while Kisii, with 3 cases, Senator Ongeri, has received 156 million. So, 156 without a case, 52 with 177 cases. So really, even if we like our counties, we need to be careful about the rationale. Mr. Speaker, another factor that ought to have been considered is the counties hosting level 5 hospitals, which have received conditional grants every year towards improving healthcare infrastructure. Such counties are already far ahead of other counties in terms of infrastructure and facilities in place, and thus priority ought to have been given to counties which are struggling to put up such facilities. So, Mr. Speaker, while the initial grant has already been disbursed of 5 billion, we plan to engage the CS for Health further, the SRC, and Treasury, because there's more money that will be given. We want it to be given in a proper criteria, Mr. Speaker, that looks at the actual need and how we deal with the pandemic, not just the same formula for devolution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, by now the committee has done 72 meetings, 72. And Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of information, Senator Zani?
I need to want to be informed. And I accept.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted, and I'm really encouraged by Senator Sakaja's work in getting feedback for this information. I just wanted to find out and maybe probe a bit further about the sort of evidence and proof that you're getting for the expenditure of funds, because I think that's where the rubber meets the road. About the location going there is fine, but we need, if we can get to the details of the proof and even have ways to actually get down to the county and confirm that the money has been used where it's purported to have been used. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senator Zani is, she's been a lecturer. She's very meticulous. And she used to be a member of my committee. In the last house, I used to chair a committee of senators, but I was in the National Assembly, joint committee. So I know how thorough she can be. Mr. Speaker, your office should facilitate us, because the Senate has resolved, this Senate of the Republic of Kenya has resolved by way of adopting our report, one of our reports, that every county government and the national government will give us a monthly expenditure report on COVID expenditure. So through the office of your office and the clerk, I hope this information has gone to all counties. We started county visits in Isiolo and Meru. We have done a schedule, and I've asked members on our platform to tell us who wants us to go to their counties. We are ready, available, willing, capable, and excited with pomp, pageantry, alacrity to go visit your county to see, while we receive the report and say, okay, Governor Ongwae in Kisii has received this money. He said he's done this. We go with Senator Ongeri and say, has this been done? We go with Senator Pogisho and see what is happening in West Pokot. We go with Senator Falada and see what's happening in, she's Nairobi, but she's Garissa, I think, both. So because, Mr. Speaker, unless we go physically, and we've clustered the counties into batches of 3 or 5, please accompany us. Let us be able to go. Mr. Speaker, I have finished my statement. I thank you for the support that you continue to give our committee and that senators continue to give our committee, and we will continue to deliver. Our mandate is going to end in the next 2 or 3 months. But meanwhile, be assured of not just reports, but action and proper oversight by the Senate of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for the good update. Senator Shionga, what is it? Yep.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I wanted to thank Senator Sakaja for the update, and they are really, we have gotten a lot of input on the same. But I wanted also to request on the same when they are inviting the CS on the issue of Lutomia, if they can consider my invitation so that I can join the Zoom on the same. I had some interest in the hearing. And again, about the grant, I'll really appreciate to join them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Senator Sakaja.
Mr. Speaker, I saw Senator Shionga distributing items without social distancing. And she was really charged, saying, "Hii ni sukari, hii ni unga," in Kakamega the other day. And I know she's doing a good part, but also I'll ask her to also follow the government guidelines. But I'll ask her to join us when Dr. Lutomia comes. And in addition, Mr. Speaker, I will make sure that she is there when we go to Kakamega, because Kakamega is one of the counties, incidentally, that is actually doing quite a good job. The governor, I must commend Governor Oparanya. He's actually doing a very good job, possibly even better than Kisumu. And it's good. In Swahili we say, Mgala muwe haki mpe. But Senator Shionga, who is my mom, we will go with her, because that Kakamega is our home county. We'll go with her and look at it. And next time when you give sanitizers and soap and sugar, let people distance a bit.
Senator Petronila Were, your next statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I rise to make this statement on behalf of Senator Dr. Mike Ombito, the Senator for Trans Nzoia County, on an issue of general topical concern on exploring new thinking to reap from TVET. Mr. Speaker, in the recent selection of colleges and universities, among the 2019 KCSE candidates who scored C+ and above, hence qualifying to enroll for university degrees, 2,632 chose to join TVETs for technical diploma courses, and this is laudable. In developing countries, TVET plays two major roles in national sustainable development. One, to provide training opportunities and career advancement avenues for the increased school leavers. One, to provide training opportunities and career advancement avenues for the increased school leavers, and 2, to provide skilled manpower at all levels. Mr. Speaker, during this time, we noticed that students who even qualified to join universities were preferring to join TVETs. Mr. Speaker, sir, the skills developed should lead to self-reliance in the absence of salaried employment and enhance industrialization. The United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda 2030 identifies TVET as a key action area in pursuit of Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, of education and that of decent work and economic growth. Mr. Speaker, sir, for TVET to be effective, governments have to renovate and reinvent to ensure an enabling environment nationwide. Considering the continuous complex changes and development in the global context, including competition for resources, investments, and markets, it's important to ensure quality in every aspect of TVET delivery. This therefore calls for the need to review TVET policies for quality assurance and better management.
Honorable Senators, for the convenience of the House, I will use Standing Order 31-2 to let her conclude that statement. Then we'll adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was actually trying to hurry through the statement to beat time. So thank you for that allowance for some more minutes. Mr. Speaker, innovation is key. First, there needs to be substantial change in the curriculum, materials used, selection of trainers, and training to ensure TVET progressively responds to evolving labor demands. And Mr. Speaker, our young people have even gone ahead and observed this before the system or government policies does by deciding on their own volition to choose TVET courses instead of university courses. Deployment of organizational practices is crucial to support innovation in this sector, which plays a significant role, including the well-being of workers, enhanced productivity, international competitiveness, and economic growth. Mr. Speaker, sir, the second thing is proper values and attitudes must be aligned to the national ethos. TVET has traditionally been thought to be a relatively unattractive educational option compared to higher education. There is a serious need to address disparities of esteem between TVET and general education by demonstrating to and educating the public on the benefits of TVET. TVET has a particular advantage for developing countries that are moving rapidly up the value chain as it allows the occupational change and mobility and provides infrastructure to cope with these changes. Mr. Speaker, lastly, a robust system at the national level to set criteria for management of quality courses, such as evidence-based TVET quality assurance management system, to ensure employees, apprentices, or trainees in enterprises and TVET institutions have the right awareness, skills, knowledge, and attitudes is very vital. And technology can also be employed to deliver TVET to more people as virtual platforms become globally available in this era of the new normal, so that our young people can have a chance to get jobs even outside this country, because these skills that are offered at TVET level are very popular in the developed world. They do not have that personnel. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, honorable senators, having concluded the business of the morning, it's now time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until today, Tuesday, 23rd June 2020 at 2:30 p.m.